everybody. How you doing? It's Bill Butler here with a very special guest here on the Scoop, Mayor Paul Brodeur. Mr. Mayor, thank you so much for joining us. First and foremost, how was your Thanksgiving?
Thanksgiving was outstanding. It was much smaller than it usually is. I think a lot of people, kind of had the same challenge. We did manage to gather folks from as far away as Rhode Island on our Zoom Thanksgiving. So we had a different but a great time. Thank you for asking. How about the Butlers?
Yeah, it was good. It was kind of very similar to what we've had. We had the in-laws over and just a very nice, relaxing day inside, and watched a little bit of football and had some turkey and all the fixins.
Sounds terrific.
Excellent. So, hey, thanks so much for coming on. Unfortunately, we usually talk about everything that's great that's going on in Melrose with the Scoop. Unfortunately, Melrose has a challenge in front of itself that we definitely wanted to bring to light. And it's regarding the proposed or the planned MBTA cuts for Melrose. So if you could just explain kind of what's planned, and then you've got a plan on how to address these cuts with our local leaders and maybe kind of reverse them.
I would be happy to, and thanks so much. As your listeners, particular folks in the real estate community that know kind of what makes Melrose go. One of the things that makes Melrose such a great community for residents and prospective buyers is the incredible access to public transportation. It is pretty easy compared to a lot of other places to get in and out of Boston. And so we think about that a lot when when public officials in the private sector think about how we develop. We lean heavily on the T for good reason. So obviously ridership has been down, and that has created a bit of a revenue problem, a substantial revenue problem for the MBTA, because fares make up around 1/3 of the revenue that supports the T. But here's what the T has proposed. On the commuter rail line, no more weekend service, no service after 9 p.m. The closing of the Cedar Park station here right in the center of Melrose, elimination of the 131 and the 136 buses, and well, that's about it, but that's a lot. That is really the heart of our transportation system here in Melrose. So what the T has done, to their credit, is put out a plan that affects the whole service area and have invited folks to weigh in. So myself, a lot of local leaders, certainly our state delegation, Senator Lewis and Representative Lippert-Garabedian, have all leaned into this and said, these cuts will really, really hurt Melrose. And what I'm hoping we can do here today is reach folks and tell them, talk a little bit more about the exact nature of the cuts and tell them how they can share their opinions with the MBTA.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's selling real estate here in Melrose, obviously I'd say that one of the top two, if not the top draw for Melrose, is the transportation here and the ease with which it is to get downtown, and obviously this directly affects it.
And folks, it's a little bit wonky to think about the big picture in terms of transportation, but one thing that's really important in getting people to use public transportation is reliability, and sometimes that means redundancy. Particularly here in New England, here in Boston, we've seen examples where the subway system might have a problem. Well, folks know, well, that's okay, because I can still get on the commuter rail and get where I've got to go. Commuter rail's out, I can take the bus to the subway and get there. So even if one kind of leg of the stool is a little bit shaky, folks still know that the system as a whole is going to be there for them. I think that's important to talk about in the background. So I'm going to try something very brave for me. I'm going to try to share my screen and look at a couple of the bus routes. Let's see. So this is make sure I got it right. This is the 136, and you can see, so this basically parallels the commuter rail. And some folks might think, all right, so well, what's the what's the big deal? Well, again, it's a redundant system, and it also runs traditionally later than the commuter rail. So it is an important, an important part of the system. And I know we're not here in Wakefield, but for all these folks up here, that means no service. There would still be with the 137 service kind of going this way, but all this would drop out. Now, the 131 is a much more serious impact for Melrose, particularly on the east side. This loop here that goes up and services a good chunk of the east side will be completely eliminated, as will this service into the Melrose Highlands. One thing that I think we really need to keep in mind is that one thing that the MBTA has said is, well, there's parking capacity in Melrose, particularly at what would be the two remaining commuter rail stations. Kind of misses the point, because one of the things we're trying to do with public transportation is get people out of their cars. Getting people out of their cars means they're also not going to be on the road. So it helps overall congestion problems. It's also environmentally the way you want to go. More people and more cars is just bad for the environment. And here in Melrose, and really at the state level, communities throughout Massachusetts are trying to get to this net zero carbon emission by 2050. If we go backwards on transportation, it's going to be a heck of a lot harder to do that. And not to be a fear monger or anything, but we are running out of time to address a lot of our climate challenges, for sure.
Mm. Yeah, it definitely is. It goes counter to what a lot of time and effort has put into, not only Melrose, but our neighboring community in Wakefield as well, regarding city planning and smart development there, and overall climate change as well. So it is frustrating that we're kind of being counterproductive here. And this is a cornerstone aspect of that.
Well, you hit the nail on the head, right? Is that what the governor and folks before him, and certainly here in Melrose, we've talked about environmental goals and housing production goals. And the way to do housing production that is the least impactful in certain ways on your transportation infrastructure is to do that transit-oriented development clustered around commuter rail sites here in Melrose. We've had a lot of success doing that, both down near the MBTA, kind of in your neighborhood, and following the rail corridors. As a matter of fact, what Melrose has done with their zoning planning is done specific zoning changes right along the rail corridor to encourage that kind of development. Because back in the day, the train was an industrial use and everything was zoned around industry. Obviously, we're not doing that anymore. Melrose is a commuter town and a service industry town. So again, all that planning gets contradicted by this. Now, to be fair, they're talking about saying these are temporary cuts, but I can tell you from my time as a legislator and from my time as a commuter, that once something goes away, it can be very challenging to bring it back. And so I want to talk a little bit about the Cedar Park commuter rail station, because again, you cut that out. One of the things that Tia said, and they've tried this before to cut out that station. Well, there's plenty of parking here and there's plenty of parking there at the other two commuter rail stations. But that's not why people moved into these neighborhoods in the first place. It was the convenience and the attractiveness of walking. Once you're going to get in your car, presumably you're going to drive to Oak Grove because it might be a little bit cheaper, depending on your individual circumstances. And the thing is that really bothers me about the commuter rail station is I don't see how that's a cost savings. It might be a marginal efficiency savings because it's easy to run a system with fewer stops, but we're not, you're not taking any bodies out of the system. I don't see where the money savings comes from. And again, I know from talking to Mayor Lyons that he fought this fight. I'm not sure if Mayor Dolan did, to try to save that station, because once it comes out, again, it's probably not coming back.
And from a real estate perspective, there are a lot of people, I've sold a lot of homes in the Cedar Park neighborhood, and that's a huge factor. The fact that people are like, can say, hey, I can fall out of bed, hop on that train, I can take care of the kids, and boom, I can hop on that train right there, and head to work. Not to mention the local businesses that are impacted.
And it's funny, and there are sometimes people use public transportation in ways you don't think about. I'll use one example. So I was knocking on doors during the mayoral campaign and talking a little bit about the T and some concerns this one particular woman in the Cedar Park area had. And she said, I actually needed to get my kid to daycare. That I don't understand. Tell me a little bit more about that. So she would actually get on the train going north, go one stop to the Highlands. That was where her daycare provider was. Drop her child off at daycare, then jump back on the commuter rail to head into town, which if you have the pass, is kind of a terrific, efficient way to get the family around, and potentially, if you're a 2-car family, go down to 1 car. That's kind of that is something that was a little bit eye-opening to me as I thought a lot about how trains and stuff, or how folks use the system. So you can never overlook that piece. Similarly with the bus, most people like, oh, I go back and forth to the subway. Folks go back and forth to Malden. It's because it's a big community, a little bit more variety of stuff going on. And some folks use it to get to medical appointments. We have clustered around Melrose Wakefield Hospital, the hospital itself, plus a lot of service providers right there. You take that off, it makes it a lot more challenging for people to get their health care.
Yeah, my in-laws, they take it to go to Tufts Medical, take the commuter rail there. And personally, we use it all the time. Obviously, I work in Melrose, but we use it all the time if we're going to the garden, to see whatever, type of event down there as well. So how are some ways maybe that people can get involved and let folks know, like, hey, this is not a good idea, and here's why?
Great question. So the MBTA is essentially run by a fiscal management control board these days. And they're going to vote on whether and how to implement these cuts at a meeting scheduled for December 7th. If you go to MBTA. I'm not sure if it's .com or .gov, they have a Forging Ahead site that they use to talk about all this stuff. It lays out in a lot of detail the nature of the cuts, the nature of the plans, and it also gives you opportunity to provide input either by giving you an email address, gives you a phone number, and it also gives you a template where you can kind of enter in your thoughts about why how the cuts would impact you. They are also doing a series of virtual public hearings done on a kind of geographically defined catchment area. We are District 9, the last district that's up for these hearings, and there's also a link on there for how you can participate in that virtual public hearing, which is taking place on December 1st. You can certainly email the governor. You could email Senator Lewis and Rep. Lipper Garabedian. Our rep and senator are already on board fighting these cuts, doing the things that they can do. So not the number one priority. The number one priority would be go to the website, use that interactive form, and make your voice heard. And certainly if folks have time to attend that public hearing, to participate in the virtual public hearing, that will be a tremendous help too. Folks, I think, get a little bit cynical about this. This is a done deal. This is never going to happen. Proposals like this have come forward by the T before, particularly around reduced commuter rail service, and the pushback from the public has really made a difference. And I'm not saying that we're not going to see no service impacts, but pushing back and creating like the real need. So this isn't abstract for the people of Melrose. This is how I get to work. It makes a difference. It really, really does. I can't encourage people enough. get on that website and let the MBTA know how these cuts are going to impact you.
Absolutely. We'll post that link. Mayor Brodeur, hey, thank you so much for joining us, and really appreciate your help, impact on this issue in fighting for Melrosians.
Well, I appreciate it. I thank you for the opportunity. I know it's kind of vacation weekend. I really appreciate you taking the time, because we don't have much time left. So it's really important for folks to get involved. And this is a terrific way for me to reach people. So very much appreciate Bill Butler and Melrose Scoop giving me the megaphone today.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Well, hey, everybody, thanks so much for watching. We'll post the link here. Please take that survey, give your input. Let's do what we can do to save these vital lines of commuting and transportation in our city, in our community.
Thanks,
Mayor
Bill.
Brodeur, thanks so much. Yeah, take care, everybody. Thanks for watching. Bye-bye.